Welcome to Overanalyzing Vlogs, where I think too much about something. Or do I? Full disclosure before we begin, this video is sponsored by SOAS University of London. They are paying me to make it, but I wrote the script. Full details at the end. SOAS made a cool animation video called A Short History of the World, which I quite enjoyed, and which gives you a feel for their and my approach to education. The animation video SOAS made is based on a lecture by Dr. Angus Lockyer, which you can find a link to in the description. Check it out, I really recommend it. And in that video, he talks about surplus. In early human societies, humans get better at hunting, gathering, producing, and eventually they produce more than they can consume. And then you get social relations, power building up, as people decide where the surplus is gonna go. And then on top of that, you get social systems that enforce that power. Not just militaries and police, but religion, culture, art that represents power without criticizing it. And that, Lockyer says, is pretty much the basis for all of human history. You produce a surplus, and power controls that surplus. And power, as I'm sure you know, is a major theme in a lot of philosophy. You might recognize some slight Marxist themes here. We've talked about Karl Marx on the channel before, and Lockyer says, yeah, a little bit of Karl Marx, a sprinkling of Marxism can help you understand history, but there's also some important deviations from it. Because the kicker is, this process of development isn't just internal. By interacting with other societies and with external forces like disease and climate change, those power relations that get built up can be shaken and disrupted. It's not like Age of Empires or the Civilization games, where you are in one stage and then you alone, you progress to the next stage in the chain. History, the history of philosophy, economics, and the history of history itself, is what historians call uneven and combined development. Basically, it's like Doctor Who. People assume that history is a strict linear progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, history is more of a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. What SOAS try to do is teach not just from an Anglo-centric or Eurocentric position. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll remember that a while ago I was talking about a book I really enjoyed called How the West Came to Rule. Well, one of the guys who wrote that teaches at SOAS. A lot of history, a lot of philosophy, a lot of academia generally is taught from a position of European primacy. We only look at European philosophers and European events, and often we only look at them uncritically. Europe leads the world in invention and thought and exploration. But that's just not how history went down. Europe has done, and still does, some cool stuff, but human learning has been much more cooperative than that. To give just a few examples, if you read How the West Came to Rule, you'll learn that capitalism wasn't just invented by the Dutch and English, it was very much an international thing. The Teme Augauma Anishinaabe First Nation people of Canada understood the principles of sustainable development long before any European university. A lot of what French philosopher Michel Foucault said about power was actually said about 8 years earlier by the Black Panther movement. The point is, whether you're learning history, philosophy, English or whatever, if you look only at Europe, and only at Europe uncritically, you'll never get the full picture. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard writes about a madman who escapes from a lunatic asylum. And he realizes that if he only says mad things, they're going to realize he's mad and send him back. So he resolves to only say true, uncontroversial things. So he goes into town, and to everyone he meets, he says, "The world is round. The world is round. The world is round. The world is round." And of course, they pretty much instantly realize that he's mad and send him back to the asylum. And Kierkegaard's point was that you can say only true things, only facts, and still be wrong, because you haven't appreciated the context in which you are speaking. You haven't appreciated that behind the faces you're talking to, there are people with their own beliefs and expectations about the conversation that go beyond just the facts. And he writes that curing the madman wouldn't be getting him to renounce his belief that the world is round, because after all, he is correct. Curing him would be getting him to understand the context in which that fact matters. And that is the context that SOAS are trying to provide. So what all this means is, you cannot understand the world only by looking at one perspective. You can't understand history or English or philosophy only looking at Europe and ignoring everyone else. You can't understand Christopher Columbus and his voyage to the New World without learning about the Ottoman Empire, who were providing economic pressure to the East. You can't understand John Stuart Mill's views on liberty without learning about the British invasion of India. As we'll be seeing when we talk about John Locke in a few months' time, you can't understand his ideas about property and government without looking at First Nation American peoples. You have to get a diverse education. SOAS is a great place to study perspectives that have previously been ignored, which in academia usually means the perspectives of people in the global south. They're trying something a little bit more challenging, a little bit different, and in that respect, they're kind of like me. One of the things I like to do on the show is teach you philosophy that you can use to engage with the world today. Anybody can just summarize what a philosopher said. That's what Wikipedia is for. I try to make Philosophy Tube just a little more than that. Because philosophy is like art. It's never made in a vacuum. In fact, as this video from SOAS shows, nothing is made in a vacuum. Understanding philosophy means understanding history, understanding economics, politics, religion, art. And if you want to start getting a broader education, you can subscribe to me, and you can visit soas.ac.uk/admissions. They have a couple of open days coming up. Check out the links in the description. Full disclosure, because you deserve my honesty, this video was sponsored, like I said at the start. SOAS hired an organisation called The Big Shot, they're a marketing firm, and they have a division called The Social Circle, who hired me to make this video for them and publicise it on the social media feeds. I wrote the script, so it is also what I would have said even if they hadn't paid me. And I have some very cool plans about what I want to do with the money. So don't miss that. Make sure you subscribe because it's gonna be fun. But of course, maybe I'm just reading too much into all of this. Or am I?